Hey guys, so welcome to our weekly conversation about books. Well, it's more of a monologue than a conversation, to be honest, because it's basically me talking. So it would be great to see a comment or two to what I'm saying or not saying so that I could have a bit of a feedback and generally have a conversation with you. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about a book I haven't finished reading yet. I would also say it's a book in progress, and I'm going to be talking about Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, I believe I don't really have to explain you anything about this book. The one I have is a Penguin Books, The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. I bought it used for just €2 or €3, I guess. And it's the classic Penguin orange and white design, what I love so much about it. But why I said reading, basically because I'm listening to Sherlock Holmes as audiobooks. So Audible, this is not an advertisement or anything. I'm actually paying for the book I'm reading or listening to. They have this amazing collection of all the stories, all the novels from Sherlock Holmes series, if we can call it a series. It's just the whole world in its own. But the thing is, they have it all read by fantastic Stephen Fry. And I just love him as an actor. I love him as a person. He's just great. So the point is, I'm listening to audiobooks about him. I'm somewhere. So I just finished, it's hard to see the chronological order in it. I just finished The Hound of Baskervilles, and I loved it. I mean, I wouldn't talk about it if I didn't. I found it particularly cute how one of the characters he grew up in Canada, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Henry Baskerville. And Stephen Fry, when he's narrating, when he's reading the story, he basically uses American pronunciation, which sounds always so kind of cute when you have the whole narration in the normal Stephen Fry kind of pronunciation, his normal voice, and then all of a sudden he goes into this like American way of speaking, of pronouncing words. It's just cute. And yeah, basically I cannot say it's like the best audiobook I've ever listened to. The best ones for now are, I think it's also Audible, but anyways, it's The Rivers of London by Ben Aronovich, the whole series, the Peter Grant series. It's my favorite for now because the music, the speaker, the voice actor, he is just 100% fitting in. I loved every single book narrated by him. So basically, I have only read from Peter Grant series, The Rivers of London and The Hanging Tree, which is like the first and the last but one books. The rest of it I just listened to in audio format. And yeah, now I am doing this to The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. It's gorgeous. I have to admit that I haven't read all of them. Never, ever in my life. I don't know, somehow everybody did it when they were little, but I never got around to do it. So I am getting into this now, which is a bit confusing because it's hard to grow up in the Western world without actually getting a lot of spoilers to Sherlock Holmes. We have so many films, novels, audio plays, and whatever, like fan fiction, everything that is based on Sherlock Holmes and the rest of the Conan Doyle's characters, that it's hard to not have them as like in the back of your mind when you're reading the original. And it's kind of, it gives you an odd feeling of, but this is not how I know it. This is not how it happens in the screen adaptation I have seen. So keeping in mind that this is the original, this is what came first. I think it's a great experience to have this like several levels of reading experience for Sherlock Holmes. I think it's great. As I'm a native Russian speaker, I got to know Sherlock Holmes through the Russian versions, Russian films of it. I think it's 2 or 3 films, if I'm not mistaken, and they feature great actors, amazing music. So for me, when I hear about Sherlock Holmes, this will forever only stay the Russian, the Soviet versions of the movies, because I got to know them first, obviously. And even if they're not as close to the original as they probably have to be, although nothing has to be close to the original, they are the ultimate Sherlock Holmes to me. So when I'm listening to Sherlock Holmes stories now in their original language, I perceive them as being secondary in a way. Not in a bad way, but it's like, oh, this is a version of something I have already heard of, I have seen. And it's kind of cool to see how the peculiarity of production of Sherlock Holmes stories influenced the quality of narration. A lot of things. So as I'm working in publishing now, I kind of pay more attention to that. People teach me to pay more attention to different ways of narration and how they relate to a publishing history, basically. So as Sherlock Holmes was published in installments for magazines, for journals, newspapers, basically, I think it was, when Conan Doyle wrote it, you can see how at times he kind of drags the story along and gives some clues that are so superficial and obvious that you're like, no, come on, that doesn't work like that. And eventually you realize, okay, this is probably something that was actually written to be published in small pieces, to keep attention of your readers, to make them buy the next installment, the next issue of the magazine, of the newspaper, or the journal. And you can hear it now so distinctly. Maybe this is also connected to the fact that we are used to traditional novel format, when you have like introduction, main part, conflict, denouement probably, and then a sort of conclusion to all of it. So we're so used to this that a different kind of progression in the story just seems so peculiar to us. So I don't really know, probably. That would be my guess. Anyways, I am excited about the audiobooks. Amazing quality. Stephen Fry is just gorgeous. What I also liked about the Audible Stephen Fry books, audiobooks. This is a confusing terminology. I, as a literary student, as a book historian, should be able to self-proclaimed book historian, should be able to distinguish my terminology. But anyways, so much for spontaneous videos. In the beginning of every collection, Stephen Fry kind of has his own introduction to his experience with Sherlock Holmes, to what we as contemporary readers read in the story and how it actually was perceived completely differently back in the days. And I guess still my favorite is The Hound of Baskervilles, because of all this kind of supernatural, pseudo-supernatural kind of a story. And the Conan Doyle himself, how he was actually in sort of conflict with Harry Houdini, and how he himself believed in supernatural, basically. So I think I can relate to this very well, because I love fantasy and science fiction and all the supernatural kind of novels. Very rarely I read realistic things. So anyways, this 10-minute rumble was basically about Sherlock Holmes in audiobook format. I bought this book and I am probably gonna sell it at some point, because as I have listened to all of them in audio format, I don't think I have to keep it in printed, although I do love printed books. But after I moved, I actually am reconsidering collecting books. Right. So if you have any comments or questions, if you have listened to Stephen Fry, not just Sherlock Holmes, maybe also Harry Potter, because I think he narrates Harry Potter as well, leave a comment somewhere below, or yeah, I think it's below here. And thank you guys for listening. I'll see you next Sunday.